Right, let's start off with health and safety first of all, as certainly at the moment we do not want to end up in A&E. The problem with the wheel sets and also the tool that we're going to use to ream out these bearings, they're sharp and there's an opportunity for them to fly out. So it's very important to wear eye protection and also bear in mind that if there's anybody else near you, keep them well out of the way because these things can fly and they are dangerous. Let's look at why we would want to change wheel sets in any case. There are some good reasons to do that we've covered in the past. The older plastic and metal wheels, they can cause derailments. If we look at the wheels in the lower left-hand corner, that will be typical of old style plastic. And you'll notice that the width of the tire is considerably wider than the width of the tire of more modern prototypical wheels. If this is metal, then it can cause short circuits on points which are DCC controlled. Also, in general, the plastic wheels, they don't give such a friction-free ride as the metal versions. So I'd certainly advocate changing the wheel sets for new profile metal wheels, very similar to the one shown here. Now this leads to a bit of a problem in that you need to select the correct wheel sets. This is a topic in its own right, because when you look at railway coaches, especially those going back into the steam area, there were many different types, different wheel sizes, different wheel patterns. Some had holes, some were solid. But what I would suggest is that if you can identify a modern version of the rolling stock that you have, then that will give you a good indication as to which are the correct wheel sets to replace the plastic ones with. So for an example, if you happen to have an old Hornby Gresley teak-bodied coach, they are currently being made in the new form by Hornby. So look at the new one, look at the wheels that they're using, and that indicates the ones to go for. Both Hornby and Bachmann produce a lot of different replacement wheel sets for coaches and for wagons. And for wagons, it could be spokes, it could be holes, or it could be solid wheels. But do your homework before just going ahead and buying any set of wheels. You want to get the ones that, that match. Also use a back-to-back gauge. Now the back-to-back gauge, which again we've covered in detail before, this is the back-to-back gauge. It's very simple. It's a piece of very accurately machined brass, and the width across that brass matches the width here. If you can see the top left-hand corner, that is for a double O gauge, and that's 14.8 millimeter minimum. You can buy back-to-back gauges for all of the popular gauges of wheels. And that in itself will help you to avoid derailments by setting the back-to-back, which is simply just the width between the backs of the wheels accurately. Right, now let's look at a typical old plastic bogie. I can't remember which one this was taken off, but it certainly wasn't a Hornby or a Bachmann. What you can do is, in addition to replacing the wheel sets, you could even replace the entire bogie with a modern style one. And these are available on many different internet sites. But for now, let's look at the one we have, which is, it's actually a metal axle with plastic wheels and a plastic bogie. The way I tend to remove these wheel sets is to hold the axle with my left thumb, being right-handed, and ease the wheel out with a small flat blade screwdriver between the wheel and the axle box. Now this is a sort of opportunity for the axle to fly out and hit you, hence holding it down with your thumb. This is the bearing reamer, and this is what we use to overcome tightness in the bearings when we replace the wheel sets. Often we find if we use a new wheel set, the wheels don't spin very freely because they're slightly bigger than the original wheel set. This is a great two-piece tool from DCC Concepts. I haven't come across another manufacturer that makes these, but maybe there are some out there. This particular one is typically for OO, but it also supports EM, P4, and American, Australian, and also HO models which have a longer axle, and that's typically the 26mm axle. They come in at around about $12.95. That was the price I got off the website today. And N gauge and HO gauge reamers are also available. So all of the usual gauges are covered. For those of you who work in O gauge or above, you probably have brass bearings in any case because of the additional weight involved. But I do know that there are some specialist sites that handle plastic-based bogies, and reamers are available. Now, one thing you'll see is that there are two different reamers in this pack. If you look at the business end, which is the metal, they are the same. It's the white plastic knurled knobs that are different, and I'll show you why that is in a moment. You need to choose the appropriate reamer. So if we go back to the old plastic bogie, you'll see that this one happily fits inside this open section here. This is the one which is preferred choice. It's much easier to operate than this one. The reason why this one has two wheels is simply to fit around the coupling which is here, and depending on the bogies you have, you might have some form of coupling that this particular reamer just won't fit into, but you do have a choice. Fit them as shown and apply gentle pressure to the axle boxes. So these are the outer axle boxes. Being right-handed, I would have thumb and forefinger against these axle boxes, providing reasonable pressure while I rotate the knurled knob of the reamer with the other hand. This is very much a feel exercise. You want to be putting enough pressure on so that you can just turn the reamer so you know that it is removing small amounts of material. And just keep releasing that pressure every now and again, and eventually you'll start to find it freeing up. Once you've achieved that point where the reamer moves freely without pressure on the axle boxes, then you've achieved your goal. And it's time to fit the replacement wheel set. Before you do that, check the new wheel spacing with a back-to-back gauge. Fit the wheel set simply as you removed it in the first place, and then recheck with a back-to-back gauge. It's always easier to see than it is to see a video that rather than images. So let me show you one I did earlier. Again, gently freeing up the wheel till the pointed end of the axle is free. Then just lift that clear. Take the appropriate reamer. Carefully fit that in place. Apply suitable pressure to the axle boxes while rotating until you can feel it starting to free up. That's starting to get quite free now. Spins nicely. So now carefully remove that. Take the new wheel set that you've checked with the back-to-back gauge. carefully fit that in place, just easing it back in with, in this case, a screwdriver. Spins nicely. And then just do a double check with a back-to-back gauge. And that's it. So if you'd like to open your mics, are there any questions?
If you over-ream it, is there any way back?
I've never done that, Chick. That is why I advocate that you do the process very slowly.
Oh yeah,
Very slowly indeed.
I'm a great measure twice and cut once kind of guy, but just in case, you know.
Always buy 2 bogies, check in case you don't cut the first one.
Yeah, that would do.
This is where the bit boxes come in when we go around to the various shows. Buy up scrap like this. You never know when you might need it. One thing that you can do, and I have done this before, when I've had a bogie that I have bought from a second hand from an exhibition, and the bearings, we call them bearings, but they're really conical indentations in a piece of plastic. After a while, they wear. The plastic is not that hard. It's not too difficult to use replacement plastic putty. Fill it in and just cut the bearing from new.
Keith, one of the things you're on about when you're changing your wheels, one of the things I've noticed is that depending on the type of carriages you've got, the type of track and the type of wheels need to match, because the flange on the wheels, some of them have got a flat surface on, and some of them have got a concave surface. And I've noticed that the older wheels will not run on new track because of that the way angle in the flange. And this is one of the things I've come across, which is maybe causing some derailment.
Well, you're right, Trevor, and that's one of the problems of buying secondhand stock. And I'm an advocate of buying secondhand stock, especially when you get such bargains on websites, and really when we can get back to going to exhibitions. When I go to an exhibition, I always make a beeline for the secondhand stock and the boxes of bits. You can pick up great coach bodies that don't necessarily have great bogies. If the bogies are really beyond use, then you can buy replacement bogies. But you're absolutely right in terms of the wheels. The older style wheels, and I'm sure we've all got one in our collection. It'll either have big wide plastic tires or it'll have big wide metal tires. Neither of them are conducive to good running. And certainly the old metal ones, if you're running them around on a DCC layout, as soon as they come to the frogs on the points, you'll get shorts. And the one thing that I didn't mention was that if you want to have coach lighting powered by the tracks, then you really need to have new metal wheel sets so that you can add the axle springs to them.
So Keith, are the new replacement axles longer? Is that why you have to ream them? Is it, or
not necessarily? What I have found is that some of the older plastic ones, they're just a bit variable in terms of their manufacturing quality.
you just put them up rather than taking away a lot of material?
Well, it could be just that over the years, the constant running has just worn away plastic material, and it's just embedded in the bearing. So it just needs to be reamed out to the correct size. But I mean, Chick made a very valid point. You don't want to overdo this. That video I did, clearly it was just what, 10, 20 seconds or so. But in practice, because I already cleaned the thing up, in practice, if I was doing it from scratch, I'd be doing it very carefully. I'd be squeezing that bearing, moving the reamer and then letting go until a point at which the reamer just started to rotate, and I wouldn't go much over that. Then you can add your new axle, and if you still need to take a bit more off, then fine, do it again. Much easier to remove material than it is to replace it. The point which you might not have noticed is that the DCC Concepts set of reamers actually said they were suitable for some type of HO, but not all. Even within HO, there is an axle length of, it's around about 25 mil, and you can also get them up to 26 mil. So clearly a mil is quite a difference when you're talking about width of an axle between bearings. And some of this does cause issues when you have a kind of old hardware, old rolling stock. Tooling changes over the years. You just can't really legislate for that. What I would say is that every time I've used these, I've ended up with a better running carriage. And by using them, I've converted, let's see, between 60 and 70 coaches to lighting, coach lighting, using the PMP kit. But using the PMP kit, taking power from the track. And because of that, I've had to replace every single wheel set on the old Hornby and Bachmann coaches. And using this reamer, they all run beautifully as a result. So I can't recommend it highly enough.
Thank you.
Keith, can I say that I've tried to fit Dapple axles into a Hornby chassis, and there's quite a significant difference in the overall length. So it's taken me quite a laborious time to try and ream out to get the wheels to turn. The cutter, the reamer turns freely, but the axle, it can turn easily, but on the track it just drags. It won't turn freely.
Well, Stuart, you shouldn't really get to the point of needing to try it. The wheel must spin freely in your hand before you put it back on the track. If you recall back to the video, and it's recorded so you can see it again, you'll see I purposefully used, you'll not see it from here, but this is actually a wagon or a truck wheel that I was using, and it's got 3 holes in. So you can actually see on that video, you can see the wheel spinning long after I let go of it. So what you really need to do is put your pressure with your finger and forefinger and thumb on that axle box, so that you're really getting the bearing open sufficiently for the wheel, because you might find that because the axle is that bit longer, you need to push the axle boxes in to cut deeper than you would normally do.
I've been doing that, Keith. Yeah, I'm trying to. It's taking a long time to get it to run as freely as I would like it.
Well, make sure it's running freely in your hand. That's once you've replaced the wheel itself, the wheel set, make sure that spins before you even bother putting it back onto the chassis.
Plus, the Hornby chassis is a really heavy plastic that takes a bit more grinding than normal.
Well, you know, with lockdown, we all need exercise, and so do the fingers.
A little bit of money there, eh?
Perhaps
Any other questions?
Perhaps to go back to Chick, in the good old days, Pico made brass bearings, which you could put into them. So if you did go too far and you got some of these, you could put them in. Some of you might remember the hollow ones, which you put in very, very carefully on the nose of a hot soldering iron, and you melted them into the Airfix kit axle boxes.
Use the same thing to put threaded inserts into plastic things. You can still buy boxes of threaded inserts for making 3D prints and stuff, and you press them in the end of a hot soldering iron.
Bill,
Uh,
I'm glad you raised that one, because this is one of my Bibles. It's one of the old Pico manuals, and in this you'll find the very bearings that Bill's talking about. So if you do happen to go too far, or the bogey is just beyond useful life, you can indeed drill the whole thing out, and you can buy either plastic or brass bearings to insert. I didn't want to cover them in this session because that goes over the top of it a bit, but yeah, that will give you absolutely wonderful bearings. There's nothing like a brass bearing to give you a perfect running piece of rolling stock. And as I mentioned, once you get up to the O gauge and beyond, the weight of the rolling stock is such that they're not really suitable for plastic. Although probably most O gauge ready to run do have plastic bogies. The really top end, they have brass. It's there for a purpose. It's hard wearing. Any other questions?
Couple, Keith. Any preferred website for Wheelsets and the spacer? And is there any merit in lubricating at the bearing?
Okay, in terms of websites, I would start off by, first of all, identifying the vehicle that you want to replace, coach or wagon, etc. And if it happens to be a Hornby or a Bachmann, one of the well-known ones, I would go onto their current website and see if there's a new version of it. That way you can identify the type of wheels that would be suitable. Having done that, the same websites, Bachmann, Hornby, they have a full list of the different wheels. Now you're an N gauge, yeah? Right, so we rule out Hornby and Bachmann, and we go to the more Lilliputian websites. Exactly. I didn't do too much digging around, other than identify the fact that DCC Concepts do an N gauge reamer, and I'm not sure how accurately modeled the N gauge wheels are. So I can't give you that much guidance as to which sites to go to look for them. There was a final part of your question as well. You mute.
Yeah, it was regarding lubrication. This is an N-Gauge Society kit that I've built from, and the running isn't great. I'm looking at it, and it may actually be rubbing against somewhere in the bogey itself, and I'll look into that some more. But I just wondered about lubrication at the bearing.
In general, with the plastic ones, it's usual not to use any lubrication, because that picks up all sorts of crud from the track and you end up with a bigger problem. The real answer is to make sure that the bearings are cut as cleanly as possible, and that the axles are as sharp as possible. Let's just go.
It would be a good idea when you're checking your bearings and things, when you're putting your axles in, use a wee square to make sure that they are square across the frame. Because there's nothing worse than having them just slightly off.
One final thing I would say is that these are worth the weight in gold. This is the back-to-back checker, available in all scales. And if you do nothing else but buy one of these and check the back-to-back of all of your rolling stock, you'll end up with far better running, especially if your rolling stock is prone to derailment, especially at points.
Craig, I've got a thing about oil and plastic put together, but maybe a soft 3 or 4B pencil, just twist it around and put some graphite in.
That's not a bad idea, Bill. Yeah, I'd certainly, going back to oil, one of the other reasons for not using certain types of oil is that it can also attack plastic. You really want to try and avoid that.
The 3D printing community use lithium grease to make 3D prints run over each other. White lithium grease, horrid stuff and expensive, but if you need it, you maybe need it.
Although that's all from me, there was another point that Stuart raised during the week. Stuart, if you might want to open your mic, and you mentioned to us about the use of adding a bit of weight to the vehicles to make them run a bit more freely. Could you help us on that?
Yeah, well, I've been going reading through the websites and finding that derailing's the main problem. That's why fitting new axles can rectify derailing, but also at the same time to add weight to your locomotive, your rolling stock, and to doing that, it stops it. Well, they're all made of plastic, and they just jump about a little bit. So putting the weight on can give you more traction and stabilize the rolling stock on the track. So I've done that, and you do it by ounces or grams. So I found a little gadget, quite reasonable price, for weighing weights, either coins or wheel balance weights, your car wheel balance weights, which you can put onto inside. Well, fortunately enough, I've got the ones that are concerning me is coal wagons, so they're easy enough to put inside. If you can try and get them over the axle, where you put them to bear down on the axle to get most effective. So I bought this little gadget. Oh, I've got to share the screen, have I? To show you that, let you see it.
Well, I can see it. We can see it. Yep.
All right. It's only a few quid, you know, and it's down to 3.30 after the point, so it's pretty accurate, and it certainly done me for good. And following the guide, NAMR guide to that, how much weight to put on depending on the length of each rolling stock. No, it's very good. It's well worth it.
That's very good recommendations, Stuart, because we often tend to forget that we do need some weight in the carriages and the wagons. Conversely, a lot of people find that if their locos can't pull sufficient wagons, they actually take the weight out. So it helps the loco to pull, but it means that the wagons are far too light.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yes. Yeah.
So if you really want to have a long rake of wagons successfully running round, you need to improve the adhesion of the loco, not reduce the weight of the carriages,
Yeah.
or the wagons. And of course, that leads us on to the other topic about the way we can improve the adhesion of locos, but that's for another day.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, Stuart.
Thanks, Ian.
I've used liquid lead coal. It's very small shot, but I haven't been able to find it again. Hang on.
Here it is.
He's got it.
It's called liquid gravity.
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
Liquid gravity. It's a deluxe materials, and it's the replacement for lead shot, so it's non-toxic. You'll be pleased to hear this.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, it's good because it's literally very, very fine balls, and you can
weighs
see
a ton.
it's heavy.
Yeah.
The advantage is you can put it around odd shaped areas, and then you just glue it. I just use super glue. It's great. There's only one problem. Once you've done it, you can't remove it.
Yeah. Oh, we used a bit of PVA or something.
Yeah.
To stick it in.
PVA will be fine.
Yeah.
And particularly useful for N gauge. It's very difficult to get metal weight in N gauge rolling stock, but this is very simple.
Thank you.
We've used it on the 009 for the exhibition layouts as well.
Right. Liquid. Thanks, Keith.
Welcome.
Yeah, Keith, as regards weights for carriages, Railway Scenics have just launched a new set of lead-free, self-adhesive, pre-graduated weights. They come in strips. So if anybody's interested, Railway Scenics, they've just launched them this week. Well, for the new year.
Good idea.
Okay.
One of the things I found on eBay was a kit, either a kit or a fully assembled version that fits into the flangeway snowplows to increase the weight of them, because they have a tendency to derail, and dead easy to fit. It's all 3D printed. It comes as a kit, and you can fill it with liquid gravity or lead shot, whichever you wish. If you buy it as the fully assembled one, it's slightly more expensive, but it comes pre-filled, and fitting it's a doddle.
Excellent. It sounds as if we have quite a few potential tips of the month that could be sent to Davey.
I've got one more to add. There's something I saw, one of my other interests in slot car racing, and they have what look like little tiny lead ingots, but they're just weighted ingots to then get your car. So they'd be ideal for depending on the space. But as you say, the liquid gravity with a kind of a dot of super glue, that'll do the trick over the axles as well. But just something else to add to the mix.
And of course, if we're using the real thing, i.e. lead or lead alloys, we wash our hands afterwards.